Welcome back, and thank you for joining me today. This also might be your first time joining me, and I'm so glad that you have found me and our organization. The goal in repair work is not just to survive. I will tell you that recovery work, or as some people call it, repair work, is not for the faint of heart. In fact, it feels like you are being raked over the coals sometimes, whether you're unfaithful or you're betrayed. And today, what I want to talk to you about is probably one of the top complaints, if you will, one of the top frustrations of the betrayed spouse when it comes to trying to save the relationship. When I talk to betrayeds, whether they have been in a marriage for decades or they've been in a marriage that's been less than 5 years, and they launch out into repair work, hopefully the spouse or partner is willing. What I have found is one of the top complaints by the betrayed is there is no sense of urgency by the unfaithful. And when that is happening, the betrayed feels frustrated, angry, hurt. They feel like, listen, you've just devastated me. The least that you could do would be to do some work, to try and heal, to move towards me, to pursue me, to find a counselor, to find expert help, to take ownership of what you've done and actually get us help. For some, though, early on, there is a sense of urgency. There's a passion, there's a desire. Let's figure this out. Let's get help. Let's find the right people and let's work that process. So there's a sense of urgency and there is this momentum and they're building and they're growing, and it's like every day they're doing something. They're having a meeting, they're reading a book, they're taking an online course, or they went to an intensive, and they're just doing all the things that a couple who is passionate about saving their relationship would be doing. The struggle is, for many, it doesn't always stay that way. And that sense of urgency early on starts to fade. What I have found is there is a struggle to create urgency. There's also a struggle to maintain urgency later down the road. So the reason I say this is because this video is for a couple of different types of audiences. You may have been passionate about repair work at one time, or your spouse may have been, and now it is faded a little bit, and we'll talk about that. You may be a betrayed spouse and think, man, I would love to see my unfaithful start to do some work. There's no sense of urgency. And we'll talk about that as well. I liken it to when you start this new workout program and you're passionate about it, you start to lose weight, you're getting after it, and you feel like, man, this is awesome. But you can only run at that pace for so long until it starts to fade a little bit. And a sense of comfort comes in and you kind of think, I could probably skip a workout. And then you skip another one. Before you know it, you've skipped a lot of workouts and a lot of the progress that you felt has diminished. And it can be that way in recovery work. You feel like, man, we were doing so good. What has happened? And in some cases, now this is a little bit extreme, in some cases, couples can feel like, we have relapsed. Like we both were doing so much work and we both had so much momentum and we both were really getting after it. And now it's not like that. And we have returned to this kind of everyday life, and we're no longer as passionate about what we were doing. Now, I can hear some of you, and it may even be in a condescending tone that says, Samuel, we can only run at that pace for so long. Do you ever just get back to everyday life where you're doing laundry and paying bills and taking vacations and enjoying each other and not going to a meeting all the time or reading a book about infidelity? Do you ever stop talking about infidelity? Absolutely. If you can do the work early on, and if you'll run at a pace that is filled with urgency and commitment and passion, absolutely you can get to a new normal that is filled with joy and excitement and still some work, but yet every day you're not talking about infidelity. Alternatively, though, for some of you that might be unfaithful and you're saying that, I wonder, has there been a sense of urgency right now? Are you fighting against the urgency that your betrayed partner really wants to see and feel and experience? And are you kind of dragging your feet? And so they are kind of harping on you saying, hey, we need some urgency. We need some urgency. And your retort is, Man, is it going to be like this forever? It's going to be like that until there's some urgency. It's going to be like that until there's some consistency and until there's some significant momentum, because you're missing out on joy that you both could be experiencing because you're both doing work. One of the best things that you can do as an unfaithful is have urgency and passion about repair work. I know, I understand the shame, the pain, the hurt, the struggle to want to talk about it. You would love to just avoid it. The problem is, early on, the more you avoid it, the more the pain and the hurt and the devastation for the betrayed compounds, the more the shame that you feel, the self-hatred even, the frustration, the even self-pity, that all compounds as well. One of the best things that you can do is face it head on and say, let's do this work, because I'm missing out on a quality of life that I could enjoy if I would simply do some repair work. Now, for many of you, and I think the crux of this particular video, is you may have done some work early on, and now that passion has faded. That sense of urgency maybe has faded in one of you or both of you, and it's essential that you understand when you lose that urgency, you begin to make your relationship, you begin to make yourself ripe for potential relapse, for the loss of significant momentum in your life, the opportunity to go backwards, not forwards. Now again, the key word here is balance, right? We can only run at a pace for so long before we just almost get burnt and we just kind of get spent and are like, man, I'm running at this pace for so long, I need a break. And that's okay. But long term, over a consistent amount of time, you're asking for more pain and more hurt because you've let your guard down. And again, there's balance to that. But I wonder, what is the urgency level in your relationship right now? So here are a few keys to bring what I call maintenance to your relationship, to your repair work, to the momentum that you so desperately want to keep wherever you might be in your repair work right now. Number one, what are you doing to feed oneness between you both? How are you maintaining connection? Is it working out? Is it dates? Is it spending time together? Is it watching videos together? What is it that fosters connection and oneness between you? Because as long as you're disconnected, as long as you're disengaged, you're creating the opportunity to move backwards, not forwards. Number two, what boundaries have you established? It's totally okay for you and your relationship to say, look, I need this from you, from us, and I need this to happen in our relationship. And I need this from you. And we have to discuss it. If you don't feel that you can do it, then we've got to find a workaround. But here are my expectations and here are my boundaries, especially after a fracturing of the relationship, because you need to feel safe. And if you don't feel safe, it's going to be hard for you to be vulnerable. And safety comes from a number of different things, but the case in point right now is boundaries. Can you express your needs? Can you express your desires? Can you express what you need to keep going in this relationship? Because if you can't, that's going to create even more disconnection from each other. Next is you have to feed yourself. What are you doing? What are you reading? What are you studying? What are you listening to? What are you watching? How are you feeding your own recovery work? It's not your partner's job to feed your recovery work. You have to feed yourself. You have to do your own work. You have to be going deeper into maybe family of origin issues or childhood trauma or just trauma in general, but your work is your work. And as you continue to do your work and you're feeding yourself, you're actually, which is my next point, feeding the relationship. There has to be a diet that feeds the relationship. Sure, you may be further down the road from infidelity. Maybe it's time for a different intensive or a retreat. Maybe it's time to read a book together and go through it every week. Maybe it's time to find a new therapist, a different type of therapist. But you have to keep feeding the relationship, because if you don't, that relationship starts to wither. And what was so easy at one time becomes hard. Finally, and this is probably something that you won't see coming, is that you have to take turns leading. Especially when you maybe get a couple of years down the road, there's a point where one of you leads and says, hey, let's do this book together. I read about it. It's awesome. I want to watch these videos. Let's do this work. It can't always be one spouse that's driving the recovery efforts. Eventually, if you're an unfaithful and maybe you've struggled to really feel like you can lead in the relationship, but there will come a day that you can. There will come a day that you have to, because there has to be initiative. And I'm confident that there will come a point where you can say, hey, I've been reading this stuff. I think it would be good for us. Let's do it together. And you take turns. Maybe throughout a season, you as the unfaithful are leading and driving things. And then maybe there's a switch down the road where the betrayed is like, hey, I've read this and I want to do this. And you as a betrayed may sit here saying, you know what, I've led for long enough. It's time for you to do some leading, unfaithful. It's time for you to show some initiative, because if we're going to last, it's going to have to be a joint effort.